The streets of Iran are burning and filled with anger. The chants are no longer about food or fuel, they are about overthrowing the whole system itself. The nationwide protests in Iran are now entering their third week. What began as a public outrage over a collapsing economy is now turning into the biggest challenge that the Islamic Republic has ever faced in the recent years since the revolution. So the question that the world is asking is very simple and straightforward. Is this just another protest or the beginning of something far, far, far bigger? Hello and welcome, you're watching the Karan Chronicles, and this is my take on Iran's deepening political crisis. So let's start with what has happened in the last few days to understand a little context to this whole story. On Thursday, protesters pulled down Iran's national flag. They did not just lower it, they ripped it apart. Now, you see, for a country where symbols of the states are tightly protected, tightly guarded, this was a bold and a dangerous act. Now, alongside it came chants that Iran's leaders feared the most: death to the dictator, quote unquote. This was nothing short of an open defiance, and then later that night, Iran went silent. The country plunged into a near total internet blackout. Now, no official explanation was given, but well, we know the reason is obvious. Iran has used internet shutdowns in the past as well, especially during protests, to stop the coordination and hide the violence from the world. But this time, even darkness could not stop the message, could not contain it. Videos still emerged, footages of burning vehicles with massive crowds on the roads, and clashes with the security forces spread beyond Iran's borders into the world. In short, the blackout failed. And as the protests escalated, something even more symbolic happened. Protesters toppled the statue of Soleimani, one of Iran's most revered military figures and a former commander of the Revolutionary Guards. You see, even after his death in a US strike years ago, Soleimani remained a powerful symbol of Iranian resistance and Iranian strength. And now even his statue is not safe in Iran. According to a report in Iranian state television, a religious shrine was also vandalized. Now, whether that is exaggerated or real, it shows one thing clearly, that the fear barrier is breaking. People are no longer just protesting against the policies of this regime. They're challenging the ideology itself, the icons itself, and the authority of the regime itself. So how is the regime responding to it? You see, Tehran's response has been both cautious and brutal at the same time. Initially, the government tried soft talk. They tried to contain the situation with promises of subsidies, economic reliefs, and negotiations. But that tone did not last very long. Soon, the security forces moved in. Police clashes with the protesters across the cities and towns were reported, although there are no official casualty numbers, but reports suggest at least 45 people have been killed, and this number includes children as well. And then came a clear message from the top leadership. Iran's supreme leader Khamenei. He addressed the nation on the state television. He condemned the protesters, calling them vandals and accusing them on acting on the behalf of foreign powers, on the behalf of the Western powers. He gave a clear message, a direct message, that the regime will not back down, will not step back. You see, Iran's ongoing crisis could also have serious implications for our country, India, both economically and strategically, and that is why it's important to study the situation. Iran is a key player in the Middle East, you see, and instability there threatens energy security as India relies heavily on oil imports from this region. Any disruption could push global oil prices higher, directly impacting inflation and fuel costs in our country, India. Speaking strategically, prolonged unrest may weaken India's interest in Chabahar port. If you're not aware, this is a critical gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asia that helps us counter China's growing influence in this region. But let me tell you something which is even more concerning, which is even more important, that Iran's leadership is not just dealing with pressure at home. From outside, the warnings are getting louder and louder and louder. The United States has said that it is watching the situation very closely. President Trump warned if Iran continues killing people, the protesters, there could be serious consequences, serious implications. And after what happened in Venezuela, well, everybody is taking the threats of President Donald Trump quite seriously. At the same time, another voice has re-emerged. Now, why am I saying re-emerged? The exiled crown prince of Iran, the son of country's last emperor, last Shah, last ruler, has called for nationwide demonstrations. He has not returned to Iran since the 1979 revolution, let me tell you. But his statements are already adding fuel to a raging fire. So now the regime faces pressure from three different directions: the streets, the foreign powers, and opportunistic political rivals waiting for a political opening. There are also whispers that Iran's supreme leader could flee the situation and could flee to another country, possibly Russia, if situation worsens. These claims are unconfirmed at this point of time, but rumors can be dangerous alone in such a situation, because when people believe that the leadership is preparing to run, to flee, the panic only accelerates and it becomes even harder to contain the situation. So in the end, the question is that, is this an end for Iran's leadership? Well, geopolitics has told us that the authoritarian regimes do not fall that easily. History tells us. They collapse when four things happen. Number one, when economy breaks, when people lose fear, protests sustain momentum, and fourth, when security forces hesitate to take action. Now, Iran today checks at least three of these four boxes. You see, the economy is in free fall. That is in front of everybody. People are openly defying the orders of the police. Protests are decentralized and they're very hard to crush because they're spread across the nation. What really remains uncertain is the final question. Will the military obey orders, or they will stop if the situation continues? Because the anger is real, the fear is fading, and the pressure is mounting. Whether the regime survives or not, one thing is very clear, that Iran has entered a moment that will define its future, and something is definitely going to change. And that change will be watched closely by the entire world. And dear viewers, before I go, let me say this again. In today's world, you have to take the voices, the concerns of the people very seriously. Otherwise, we have seen what happened in Nepal, Bangladesh, etc. And I have said this in the past as well, and I'll repeat it, I'll say it again. In today's world, there is no space for authoritarianism. You simply cannot suppress the voices of people. Everybody has a voice in today's world. You have to listen to them and work for their best. Let's see how this situation evolves in the coming day. But thank you very much for watching. I'll see you very soon.